Welcome everybody to this tutorial for the Behringer K-2 synthesizer, or the KORG MS-20 or MS-20 Mini, whichever one that you happen to have. So what I'm going to do in this tutorial is I'm just going to go over the functions of the synthesizer in such a way that I'm assuming that you already understand. You have a basic conception of synthesis, like what's an oscillator, what's a square wave, what's a low pass filter, and so forth. And if you don't, then you can read up on that or look it up, and I'll probably make a video on that soon eventually myself. So keeping that in mind, here's what I'm gonna do now is go through the different parts of the synthesizer. And first I'm going to start with the left side, which is where the knobs are, and then I'm going to move to the right side, which is where the semi-modular section is and the different inputs and so forth for your different patch cables and things like that. Welcome to my channel. I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you are interested in this content, I encourage you to please check out my individually crafted 75 techno, house, and electronica patches for the K2 and MS-20 variants. All links are down below this video. It's great if you would like immediate high quality sounds for your own songs, and also as learning material to see how each of the patches was made and use the principles for your own sound design. Thanks again and enjoy the video. Okay, so first let me just start with the oscillators. I'm going to bring the synth back in real quick and turn oscillator 1 down like this. Okay, I'll explain why there's noise there in a second. Let me just turn that off. Alright, so the first oscillator is right here. You see it says oscillator 1, and then oscillator 2 is right there. It says oscillator 2, as you can see right at the top, and then it's got the waveform. So it's got a triangle, sawtooth, square, pulse, and it's got pulse to pulse width modulation, which is actually this knob right here. As you can see, it's got pulse width modulation. It's got a noise, and on oscillator 2 it's got sawtooth, square, pulse as selectable waveforms, but no pulse width modulation, and it's got a ring modulator. Now right here is just your octave selectors. That's your pulse width modulation. And right here, this is the tuning for oscillator 2 actually only. So you would use this to detune oscillator 2. Okay, and you go down, this whole thing right here is oscillators and your pitch section and everything. So when you go down here, it says master tune. That's your tuning for both oscillators together. Okay, so let's bring in, this is a VCO mixer. So this is VCO 1 level and VCO 2 level, so you can bring them in separately. So we'll bring in VCO 1. See, there's the octaves. And then we can bring in VCO 2. There's a pulse wave right now. Square wave, sawtooth, octaves. So let's say when they're on the same number, like 16 and 16, they're on the same octave. So this one actually goes lower. So this can be used as more like a sub oscillator. And that's actually why it's got a triangle wave, because that's a good waveform for a sub wave. Okay, so like let's say we have them both now about 16, and I bring them up a little bit like this. You see how they're like on the same pitch, but they're detuned. Alright, that's because this knob right here is a little different depending on what synth you have. Not the model, but just any synth. The numbers aren't exact, so right now it's actually says 0, but it's detuned. So you just do it by ear, bring them together. tune, and then if you want to do master tuning, it goes down 5, up 5. Alright, so there you can see, there's your triangle, square, there's your pulse, there's your PWM. Now the thing about the K2 as well as the MS-20 and MS-20 Mini is actually doesn't have any kind of pulse width modulation that you can modulate at all. So basically you're just set with what you do here by hand, whether you set it or move it around by hand. There is no way at all here to modulate this unless you put in some kind of mod with some circuit bending or something. Okay, so that's basically your whole oscillator and tuning section. The last thing here is portamento. Now, this portamento here is portamento for the every note, so it's not just for ties, but it puts portamento on every note, whether it's legato or not. Okay, so that's important to keep in mind. So that's the oscillator section, basic controls, and we have the VCO level section. The last part here is the ring modulator. So when you put it to ring, the effect is only on oscillator 2. So if you only want to hear the ring modulation, you put it only oscillator 2 up. And basically the way this works is it's actually dependent on the pitch differentiation. Now if you bring an oscillator 1, you just hear a regular waveform. So if you just want ring mod, you bring this up. Now when you're using ring mod on the MS-20 or the K2, it automatically bases it on the pulse waveform, whether it's selected here or not. So as you can hear, no matter what I select, it doesn't actually change the sound. But because it's on the pulse waveform, the pulse width modulation changes the sound. So you can get different timbres by going up octaves, pitches, and changing the pulse width. And the cool thing about that is, like, you can change this independently. So if you want to bring it back in, you can select your sawtooth and hear that, or you can put some noise, right, without affecting the ring mod. So that is the oscillator section. Okay, now we can go to, let's just bring in this oscillator 1. You go to the filters. It's real simple here. You have a high pass resonant filter and a low pass resonant filter. So when you do the low pass, this is your cutoff. There's your resonance. Okay, what makes the MS-20 and the K2 unique is it's got this high pass resonant filter. So you can just use it to high pass your sound, or you can use it as a resonant effect. Alright, like that. Okay, so when you use them both and you modulate them both with different envelopes and things like that, that's when you start getting like the unique sounds that the MS-20 style synths are able to create. Then that's basically that, and you can see how I kind of went from the oscillator section. You see this thick line because this cuts off all the basic signal section, because this is like all the signal of your synthesizer and what it's processed through is right here. This is modulation. That's all modulation. So anything below this jagged line is modulation, and anything on top of the jagged line is your signal and signal processing, like oscillators filter. Basically, that's all it is, and amplitude levels. All right. So on the K2, what's special is you see right here It's got filter 1 and filter 2. Now, is based on different models of the MS-20. So when you put it on filter 1, this is more like the Mini actually. And another model of the MS-20, it's got an inherent noise in it. But it's also, the resonance sounds different. And it affects both filters. So you can hear how that sounds. You can hear how this sounds. See, it's actually, the resonance is different. And same there. Okay, so they actually sound different. Alright, and the filters do self-oscillate, so you can put the resonance up and then get a sine wave, or like a noisy sine wave. Alright. The other thing about this particular synth is on the K2 you actually have like an overdrive for the oscillator levels, which you don't really have on the MS-20 synths. You have it a little bit on the Mini, not really on the original. But overdrive basically comes in when you hit the level above about 7. You get filter overdrive. So, and you can hear it on the resonance. Like, you'll get a clean resonance without overdrive under about 6.5 or 7, and then you start distorting the resonance. See, it's got that distorted sound. And you bring it back. And you can get a clean sound, and it works with both of the filter types. Okay. So that's about it for your signal generation section when it comes to the oscillators, levels and tuning and so forth, and the filters.